Thank you. Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. This is a matter of public importance. This government's level of incompetence is such that I don't think anybody in this chamber in their lifetime has seen anything that resembles the crass incompetence of this government, of these ministers, of this Prime Minister, and indeed of the senators in the Labor Party here in this chamber. It's very interesting that in such a pointed matter of public importance, the Labor senators have not sought to raise any achievements, any legitimate achievements that have arisen from good public policy and good administration. And the answer is, in questioning why that is the case, is because there simply aren't any. This government does lurch from one fiasco to another, and this very last weekend we saw, for all to see and understand, incompetence in living, breathing form in ministers and in a Prime Minister. Mr Acting Deputy President, good government has a number of qualities. The first is that it has a competent leader in control of her ministers. Secondly, it comprises of competent ministers in a cabinet that are loyal to their leader, the Prime Minister. Thirdly, good government has a party room or a caucus that is loyal and in support of a Prime Minister and her ministers. This Prime Minister, this government has none of those three features. Kevin Rudd is running a relentless and utterly ruthless campaign to regain the leadership of the Labor Party, and this Prime Minister has no authority to discipline him or deal with him in any shape or form whatsoever. He is on the loose, out of control, and is undermining this government at its very foundation. And she is so lacking in authority, she can do nothing but smile and watch. This campaign of Mr Rudd's would not have a feather to fly with if it was not for the void of honour and integrity that this Labor cabinet has created. A void that is so hollow and deep that Kevin Rudd is enjoying the rock star status and the performances we observed on Friday night in Perth, unchecked, undisciplined. All because these ministers in this government are so disloyal, so undisciplined, so lacking in honour and so lacking in integrity. They are collectively disloyal. They are incompetent and ill-disciplined in everything they do. And one can probably name more than 50 different policy approaches that have come off the rails, that have been a waste of money, that have been so poorly understood and administered by these ministers that they are a standing joke in Australian public policy circles. In terms of public policy and government, skills from these ministers, their skills can be summed up in one word, and that word is spin. They muck up something and they will tell you that they actually were successful. The last weekend we observed Qantas in chaos, the travelling public in chaos, and what did we have? We had this government saying that they had resolved the issue successfully. The fact is that they were caught out in a most obvious and ridiculous way. They were sitting on their hands, they had plenty of warnings, and when, with 3 hours' notice that there was to be a lockout, what did they do? Absolutely nothing, leaving the public in the lurch. And why does this Prime Minister lack all authority? There have been a number of events that have indicated that she is prepared to say and do anything to get a byline, to get over a hurdle, to avoid scrutiny. The first and most obvious thing was the promise that there will be no carbon tax under a government that she personally led. We all know the level of integrity and the level of honour and honesty and truthfulness in that statement. But of course, when confronted with various problems in the execution of Kevin Rudd, she tossed up the East Timor solution. Now, the incredible fact about this was she didn't even bother to tell the East Timorese. Then when pushed, she throws up the Manus Island solution. Of course, again, the Papua New Guineans in Port Moresby were not even consulted. Needless to say, the Malaysian solution has gone the same way as the other two. A complete and utter fiasco. But more importantly, our foreign policy stance with our near neighbours is in an absolute shambles. Now, this is a Prime Minister and a Cabinet that has lost its way totally, is extremely incompetent, lacks integrity, and where is the evidence? Well, the evidence, as I've hinted at, is of course the performance of Kevin Rudd at Choggum. At every single opportunity, he upstaged his Prime Minister. Every single time she wanted to make an announcement, he was there butting in just a day or so before, half a day before, ripping the rug out from under her. His conduct with respect to the government's policy of mandatory pre-commitment in clubs with respect to poker machines is virtually giving two fingers not just to Cabinet and the Prime Minister but to his party. And she does not have the authority to come in and discipline him. He has refused to endorse the policy. Secondly, the second piece of evidence that is the smoking gun of a complete collapse of integrity inside the Labor Party is these Cabinet leaks. Now, the business of Cabinet is only going to be conducted successfully if people can talk freely and can conduct their business with a sense of confidence and security. What we have here is Cabinet ministers openly briefing journalists against their colleagues. This is indicative of the last days of a decadent and collapsing government. The point about this Cabinet is that it is so full of bile and invective towards each other that they are now seeking the assistance of the media, a hungry media, to launch campaigns against each other. Of course, we've seen people who have been accused. A senator in this place has been accused of conducting the leaks. We've seen ministers arguing, Minister Albanese and Minister Evans arguing with each other as to the way to resolve the Qantas dispute on the weekend. And of course we find out about that because ministers are leaking against each other. This Prime Minister's authority is so low that there is a complete and utter failure to conduct any discipline or to run this Cabinet properly. Indeed, may I say, Kevin Rudd is now so confident he has undermined the foundations of this Cabinet so much that he is openly sending out signals and invitations to those that assassinated him that there will be no retribution upon his return. There will be no retribution upon his return. All is forgiven. That is the level of lack of authority of this Prime Minister. She is just spending time floating on the surface, treading water, waiting for the inevitable. And the product of that is the sort of events we saw this weekend. Now, of course, she has absolutely no one to blame but herself for this, because it all comes back to the public's perception of what is integrity and what is truthfulness and what is a reliable element in her makeup that the public can have confidence in. And of course, the first thing that everybody out there in Australia goes to see what sort of a person this Prime Minister is the promise made just before the last election that there will be no carbon tax under the government she leads. She made that promise because she knows that this is poison And yet here she is, having sold her soul to the Greens, pushing on with it. She and this cabinet are doomed.